MSNBC is having some problems. I don't know if you've heard the breaking news about Mehdi Hasan. It appears that MSNBC has decided to cancel Mehdi Hasan's show. So there goes Mehdi's job. Now, I have a strong suspicion as to why they have decided to do this, and I'm going to show you an example of why I think this has happened. But first and foremost, I want you to realize that Joy Reid's show is not canceled by MSNBC. In fact, Joy Reid right now is talking about how Israel's has these atrocities in the West Bank, how they're displacing people in the West Bank, right? Mehdi Hasan has also talked about this. Mehdi Hasan has talked about Gaza. He's talked about the Palestinian children. He's talked about the casualties, right? Joy Reid has also talked about these issues because I actually applauded them for actually talking about both sides for once and not just talking about the pro-Israel side. I was really surprised that they were actually talking about things from a Palestinian perspective as well. That is Joy Reid and Mehdi Hasan. So why cancel Mehdi Hasan's show and not Joy Reid's show? I think I know why, and I'm going to show you. I want to start with Joy Reid's clip here about the West Bank just to show you an example. So shout out to Case Study QB for this clip. He goes on to say, I'm an M on the continued violence from Israeli forces in the West Bank. So here is Joy Reid discussing the violence that is happening in the West Bank. Listen to this.
Well, let's talk about what's happening in the West Bank. We know that there was a raid because while the news, at least for the moment, I don't know how good I don't know if the word good is usable at this point, but for the people of Gaza, at least the bombing has stopped for now. The violence has actually ratcheted up in the West Bank. There was a raid in Jenin that left at least a 9-year-old and perhaps 2 children dead, killed.
Let me pause here for a second. Let's go back. Listen to what she says.
Because while the news, at least for the moment, I don't know how good I don't know if the word good is usable at this point, but for the people of Gaza, at least the bombing has stopped for now. The violence has actually ratcheted up in the West Bank.
That part right there. The violence has actually ramped up in the West Bank. And a lot of people are not talking about this. And we've mentioned this before while everyone was talking about Gaza, and I talked about Gaza as well. Don't forget about what's happening in the West Bank. So once again, I was very surprised that she was covering this part of the story, because again, this goes against the narrative that MSNBC wants to push in reference to Israel and the Palestinian people. And also, I don't know who picked out this outfit for Joy, but I don't think I've ever seen leather collars on a shirt. And I don't think I've seen them that big. I don't know where Joy got this shirt from, honey. I don't know where you got this shirt from. I don't know, but whoa, holy smokes. Let's continue.
There was a raid in Jenin that left at least a 9-year-old and perhaps 2 children dead, killed by IDF soldiers. What is going on? And also the arrests are continuing. It appears that while Israel is releasing women and children from Israeli jails, they're also re-arresting and arresting lots and lots of people on the West Bank. What's happening there?
So I'll go ahead and tell you before he comments. What's happening there, Joy, is what has been happening there for years. They are pushing the Palestinian people out of their homes. 2 boys, 9-year-old boys, were killed, just killed. They weren't trying to arrest, they weren't arrested. And you got to understand, when Palestinians are arrested, it's not like they go to court. It's not like they have a trial and they're tried by a jury. They're thrown into prison and tortured. Boys, kids, 2 9-year-old boys taken out by a sniper. I can't play the video on here, but I saw the video on social media. It's disturbing. Kids.
Yeah, I mean, look, to your point, there's no Hamas in the West Bank. The Palestinian Authority is as close of an ally as you can possibly be for Israel as well. They are described by Palestinians who are disenfranchised with it as the Palestinian face of Israeli occupation. But against the backdrop of what is supposed to be relative calm and truce during the war in Gaza, the West Bank is anything but. We have seen over the course of the past 55 days since October 7th, Israeli settlers in the occupied West Bank going on rampages, destroying homes, forcing Palestinians out of their villages, many of these backed by the Israeli military. When Palestinians protest or when they confront Israeli soldiers, they are shot. And in some cases, even in situations where there are no confrontations, the Israeli military is going into Palestinian towns and villages that are technically supposed to be under control of the Palestinian Authority in what is known as Area A under the Oslo Accords. And they're raiding these towns and cities and arresting Palestinians and at times, as we've seen, shooting them, including a 9-year-old boy that was killed earlier today. This is also happening against the backdrop that Israel is releasing Palestinians, some of whom were actually arrested after October 7th, as in the case of Ahed Tamimi, a prominent Palestinian activist and feminist who was arrested after October 7th, now being released part of this truce that has been playing out over the past 6 days. So while the world's attention is on Gaza, you are now looking at more than 200 Palestinians that have been killed over the past several weeks in the occupied West Bank, Joy.
Thank you.
So what I wanted to say is when I was talking about Gaza, one thing I kept saying is like, don't forget about what's happening in the West Bank. And this is the reason why, right? Like why all the world was focused on what was happening in Gaza. People were being killed. People were being displaced in the West Bank. Imagine if someone just came up to your house, knocked on your door and said, okay, you don't live here anymore. I'm kicking you out of your house. And it's a military presence. It's not like it's just some salesman or a real estate agent or your landlord trying to evict you. It's a military presence. They're armed, pointing guns at you, telling you, get out of this house now. It is mine. Where are you supposed to go? So there's their fact. That's that factor. There's also the fact that you just lost your home. Like this should never happen to anybody. I don't care where you live, what country you're in, whatever. This shouldn't happen to anyone. They are dragging these people out of their homes. And this has been going on for years. The UN and humanitarian rights watch groups have been talking about this for years. And they said this is a humanitarian crisis. What is happening to the Palestinian people? But I push back and I also say as well with the UN, okay, thank you for making the statement. What are you going to do now? Because the UN they're great at writing these letters that describe humanitarian crisis. Human rights groups are great at writing these articles that describe the human rights issues. But then there's no next step for them. When does it get to the point where the UN actually has to intervene because other world leaders are not doing anything about what is happening? So what is the point of the UN if other world leaders are just going to ignore the statements that they make? What's the point? And they finish here.
One of the best to do it. A reporter that knows this region very well, Ayman Mohyeldin, thank you very much as always. And up next, well, let's talk about.
Okay, so this gentleman here, again, I want to show you his profile. This is Ayman, right? So he is also a host for MSNBC. I wonder how long he has before he is gone. Now, I wanted to show you that because I want to make a comparison in reference to what just happened with Mehdi Hasan. So it seems like Joy Reid can talk about that side of the issue, but it seems like MSNBC no longer wants Mehdi Hasan to talk about that side of the issue. From The Guardian earlier today, here's Mehdi Hasan here. It says, dismay as Mehdi Hasan's MSNBC and Peacock News show canceled. So he was also a part of Peacock. I don't know if everybody has that. Do people have Peacock anymore? I don't know. I don't have it. The cable TV channel MSNBC and its sister network, NBC's Peacock streaming service, is canceling the weekend news show, The Mehdi Hasan Show. Woo! Goes on to say people familiar with the decision have told the news website Semaphore. So that's actually where I saw the first posting of it, was from Semaphore. The host and journalist Mehdi Hasan will instead become an on-camera analyst and guest host. The outlet reported on Thursday the Peacock original show will be replaced by an additional hour of Amin. That's the guy you just saw on Joy Reid's show. The news program hosted by Amin Mayeldin. Staff were made aware of the news on Thursday morning. And here's a tweet here from Max Tani. MSNBC is canceling Mehdi Hasan's show, I'm told, and plans to expand Amin's show to 2 hours. Mehdi to become a fill-in host and analyst. MSNBC is also launching a new weekend panel show. This is a demotion. I remember when Don Lemon said he wasn't being demoted because they were moving him from the primetime show to the morning show. So I studied broadcast journalism in college. I'm sorry, but we know that when you are moved from primetime to morning, that is a demotion, even if they're not reducing your pay. You are demoted. The morning show does not get as many viewers, so they have less ratings, right? The primetime show gets most of the ratings. That's how it works in network television. So they're demoting Mehdi Hasan. He went from having his own show to being a fill-in host. And now I do have criticism of Mehdi Hasan. I think he considers himself to be progressive, left, whatever. But again, I've always pointed out that he's only willing to go but so far, right? I remember the way that he went after Matt Taibbi when he interviewed him, because Matt Taibbi, the Twitter files, actually revealed some damning information about the Democratic Party and how they were trying to censor people and stories. But still, why him? Let's go on. It goes on to say the show, which was broadcast live on Sundays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, covered national politics, current affairs, and global news. The show's reported cancellation sent shockwaves through his fan base. The prominent human rights attorney, Nora Eckert, called the show an oasis on air and more needed than ever. And this is her here. MSNBC cancels Mehdi Hasan's show. MSNBC, make this make sense. Mehdi Hasan's program has felt like an oasis on air and more needed than ever. His program with Mark Regev was a whole class on journalistic method. He should be amplified, not shut down. But some may say that Mehdi Hasan was already somewhat shut down before this happened. If you remember, after October 7th, once the war started with Israel and Gaza, all of the Muslim hosts, the 3 main Muslim hosts, all of a sudden were nowhere to be found on MSNBC. So much to the point that people, vented about it on social media. And MSNBC actually had to come out with a statement and say, we have not fired or removed any of our Muslim hosts. They're just on vacation. And I remember saying back then, really? All 3 of them? At the same time? They were already starting to push him out. It goes on to say here, Hasan, who was known for inviting guests onto his show and engaging with them in a fierce debate, often fact-checking and correcting them in real time. His line of questioning was often direct and unrelenting, refusing to let his guests avoid giving an answer. Some of his past guests included the former National Security Advisor John Bolton, whom he questioned about his vehement support for the Iraq War. Goes on to say here, in September, Hasan interviewed 2024 Republican presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy, whom he questioned about his position against affirmative action in U.S. higher education, despite being a recipient of a scholarship for immigrants and their children. More recently, Hasan has been outspoken critic of Israel's bombardment and military assault of Gaza. And that, my friends, is what I think was the kicker. Israel and Gaza. After the state declared war on the Palestinians' territory-controlling militant group following Hamas's mass murder attack on southern Israel on October 7th. Earlier in November, he interviewed Mark Regev, senior advisor to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and Israel's former ambassador to the UK, questioning Regev firmly on the high Palestinian civilian death toll, the Palestinian children that were killed by the Israeli military, and related matters. It is, in my opinion, I believe this interview in particular was the one that probably pushed the button to cancel his show. Goes on to say that Hasan was among few Muslim anchors in American television. So Amir, Ali Velshi, and Hasan, they were the three there. So I want to show you the interview part of it. I've talked about it before on the show, but I just want to retract. This is the one I told you. I thought they might come for him after this one. This is the interview, I think, that pushed the button. And this is the one that I believed that really did him in. This interview with Netanyahu's advisor, Mark Regev, where Mehdi Hasan basically said that he was lying and the IDF was lying about the calendar that was on the wall and about the footage that was shown. Listen to that. This is what I think really did it.
I agree with you. We shouldn't blindly believe anything Hamas says. But why should we believe what your government says either? Your military spokesman on Monday pointed to an Arabic document in the basement of a Gaza hospital and claimed it was a Guardian list on which every terrorist writes his name. But that was false. It was just a calendar.
This part right here. Because you see, this was a part of the video footage that the IDF had, and they said, oh, look at this, look at all these names and yada, yada. But honestly, I didn't even need you to translate this for me, because just looking at this without the English translation, you can see the dates here. It says here 10/11, 10/10, 10/9. I mean, the numbers are still the same. So we didn't even need the English translation if people would have actually just taken a closer look at what they were viewing at that point in time. But here we go.
With the days of the week on it, your colleague in the Prime Minister's office, Ophir Gendelman, posted behind-the-scenes footage from a Lebanese short film and claimed it was Palestinians in Gaza faking their own injuries. That tweet is still up a week later. That is endless disinformation from your government, is it not?
I disagree, and I think on the important issues, look, I'll give you an example, Mehdi. Originally, we estimated... No, answer your question. Allow me to answer your question. I'm answering your question directly, if you'll allow me. We originally said in the atrocious Hamas attack on our people on October 7th, we had the number at 1,400 casualties. And now we've revised that down to 1,200 because we understood that we had overestimated. We made a mistake. There were actually bodies that were so badly burnt, we thought they were ours. In the end, apparently, they were Hamas terrorists. When we make a mistake, we admit it.
Short on time.
Why does that give you permission? Why does that give you permission to accept Hamas's numbers? I don't understand.
I didn't ask about Hamas numbers. I said to you that your military
spokesman... you were quoting to me before Hamas numbers, Mehdi. You were quoting to me Hamas's numbers.
Because the entire UN and the human rights community and the American intelligence community on Friday said they trust those numbers. But you're dodging my question, Mark.
I'm not sure that's true.
Why did your military spokesman on Monday point to a calendar in Arabic and say these are the names of terrorists on them? That's false.
So you see, this is what I think really pushed the envelope here, because he called out the IDF to the face of Netanyahu's advisor. And then also keep in mind, Mehdi Hasan probably most likely knows how to read Arabic, right? So there's that too. But they were caught in a lie. And that actually makes people think about other things. If they lied about this piece of information in the video, what else did they lie about?
Can you accept that here and now?
I'm not aware of the incident.
Let's put up the image. We have the image. You have no comment.
I don't read Arabic. It doesn't help me. I have no comment. I'm not familiar with the incident.
Does your spokesman read
Arabic? Hang on, I have a question, Mehdi. You're a journalist. Have you made a professional mistake ever?
And see, this is when the advisor was actually put on the spot here. Now he tries to pedal back and basically says, well, haven't you ever made a mistake before? See, this is the interview, in my opinion, if I had to pick one, this is the interview I think that did Mehdi in. And notice the cancellation of his show happened after this interview. Now, just to play devil's advocate, just in case MSNBC tries to come back later and they try to say, oh, it was because of ratings. Really? Let's look at the ratings. The Mehdi Hasan show, I'm going to show you this compared to other ones, right? It says February 28th, 2021 till Sunday, November 19th, 2023. The Mehdi Hasan show was watched by a total of 440,000 people as of the daily audience measurement of November 19th, 2023. So you can see here, right? 440,000, November 19th. At one point, he had a big spike here, 921,000 people, right? So obviously, it's not the same numbers that Tucker Carlson had on Fox News, but Fox News also has more viewers than MSNBC does, where I think Tucker Carlson was pulling in like what, 4 million, 5 million people while he was live. MSNBC doesn't have those numbers. So just keep that in mind. But so it's not that it was a number one show, but was it at the bottom? I don't think so, honey buns. Let's go down. I'm going to show you. Look at this. The top MSNBC shows. I'll make it a little bit larger so you can see. Okie doke. The number one MSNBC show is Rachel Maddow. Now that makes sense, right? Because she got that contract where she's paid like what, $30,000 an episode. I think that was announced last year. So that makes sense. She's the number one show. I still think that's ridiculous to pay her that much. Lawrence O'Donnell is number 2. Beat with Ari Melber's number 3. Deadline White House 4. All In with Chris Hayes. That's the emoji guy. Number 5. Alex Wagner 6. Inside with Jen Psaki is 7. Morning Joe is 8. Joy Reid's right here at number 9. So Joy Reid's show is in the top 10. Mehdi Hasan's show is further down, but I want to make a point. We go to Did they just change this? I think they just changed this. Yes, they did. They removed him altogether. Okay, so earlier when I looked at this, Mehdi Hasan's show was over around here somewhere. It looks like they took it off the list. They took it off the list earlier. But what I can tell you is this. He was not in the bottom 5. Okay, I do remember that much, that he was further up. I can't believe, so this updates in real time. I can't believe they took him off this list. That's really interesting. That was very fast. I should have got a screenshot. Anywho, I can tell you, if my memory serves me correctly, he was not in the bottom 5. So the question is, if it's based on ratings, and I can tell you where he is actually looking at the numbers. 429,000 MSNBC reports live. Katie Fang's show, 466. Mehdi Hasan was right in here in between Katie Fang's show and MSNBC reports live because he had 440,000, right? So he was right in between there. He wasn't even in 1, 2, 3. He wasn't even in the bottom 10. So if they want to use the excuse for ratings, why didn't they cancel these shows at the bottom? Love and the Constitution, Periodical. This show right here, Paper and Glue, gets 103,000 viewers. Why didn't they cancel those shows if it was just based on ratings? Why? Because it wasn't just based on ratings. That's the point that I'm trying to make. So the hypocrisy here is that Joy Reid is able to talk about the Palestinian perspective, but they don't want Mehdi Hasan really talking about it because he has the lived experience in reference to being Muslim, right? He has a little bit more information than some of the others. And 2, he is not one of the top 10 shows. So a combination of both. But if I were to narrow this down, I really think it has to do with that interview that he had with Netanyahu's prime advisor. And if it is because of that, if it is because of the interview that he had with Netanyahu's advisor, what does that tell you about media capture? It's advertisers, right? Because they do have advertisers on these channels. The shareholders, BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street Corp. What does that tell you? The people that you see on these networks, the commentators, the anchors, those who are in the field whenever they are actually in the field, those people are just puppets. Anderson Cooper is just a puppet. He sits down and he reads a teleprompter. That's it. Guys, I majored in broadcast journalism. I know. I've been through this. I had internships. I know exactly what they do. They're just reading a script. But Mehdi is gone. Mehdi is gone. And that makes me question, who will be gone next? Who will they come after next? Who maybe doesn't say things exactly the way they want them to say it? That's the thing about mainstream media. This is why we have to be against censorship, because they can come after all of us, not just those of us in independent media. They can come after you at your job, school. Think about it.